The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras ready, waiting to capture every smirk, every misstep, every moment that could turn into a headline. On one side of the aisle sat the legal team, polished, prepared, confident. On the other sat Elon Musk, his expression unreadable, his posture relaxed, as if he were anywhere but in the middle of a high-profile case. At the judge's bench, a man in his 60s adjusted his glasses and let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Mr. Musk," he said, his tone laced with amusement, "I have to say, I've read your filings and I must admit, this is some of the most unusual legal reasoning I've ever seen." Laughter rippled through the courtroom. A few attorneys exchanged glances, smirks, barely concealed. A reporter scribbled something into a notepad, the headline already forming in their mind. Musk didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if considering the words. Then, after a pause, he spoke. "Unusual doesn't mean incorrect, Your Honor." The judge leaned back, clearly entertained. "I suppose we'll find out, won't we?" Another chuckle from the crowd. The opposing counsel folded his arms, already anticipating an easy win. They all thought this was just another eccentric billionaire making a fool of himself. Another high-profile case where wealth would collide with the hard walls of the legal system. They had no idea what was coming, because in just a few minutes, the laughter would stop. And they would realize Elon Musk was 3 steps ahead of all of them. The case was supposed to be straightforward. A high-stakes legal battle, the kind that made headlines, where the courtroom was less about justice and more about spectacle. On one side, a team of veteran attorneys representing corporate interests, political allies, and those who had long viewed Musk as a nuisance. On the other, Elon Musk, arrogant, unpredictable, and, in their eyes, completely out of his depth. The lawsuit itself was just another attempt to control him, to rein him in. They had thrown everything at him. Accusations of regulatory violations, breach of fiduciary duty, even reckless behavior that, according to them, had cost investors millions. The charges weren't just about money, they were about power. Musk had disrupted too many industries, embarrassed too many politicians, made too many billionaires uncomfortable. He didn't follow rules the way others did. He didn't sit quietly while regulatory agencies stalled progress. He didn't ask for permission before launching rockets, buying companies, or calling out hypocrisy where he saw it. And for that, they wanted to make an example out of him. The legal team had planned this moment carefully. They had spent months crafting their arguments, preparing for every possible defense Musk could present. They expected him to be dismissive, to try to charm his way out of trouble, to rely on his celebrity status instead of real legal substance. They had brought their best attorneys to put him in his place, to remind him that no matter how much money he had, the legal system was not his playground. And the judge? He was already leaning in their favor. He wasn't just any judge. He was one of those old-school legal minds who had spent decades watching corporate giants try and fail to bend the law to their will. He had no patience for theatrics, no interest in Elon Musk's larger-than-life persona. To him, Musk was just another billionaire who thought he could outsmart the law. And if there was one thing the judge had prided himself on over the years, it was making sure men like that learned their lesson. That was why he had laughed, because in his mind, the outcome was already decided. Musk, of course, knew exactly what was happening. He had seen this play before. He had been underestimated his entire life, dismissed as a dreamer, a reckless entrepreneur, a man whose ideas were too wild, too impossible to ever succeed. They had laughed at Tesla. They had laughed at SpaceX. They had laughed at Neuralink, at Starlink, at every single thing he had built. And now they were laughing at him again. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses once more. "Mr. Musk, I assume you have competent legal representation." The opposing attorneys smirked. One of them whispered something to his colleague, both shaking their heads in amusement. Musk simply clasped his hands together, nodding. "Oh, I do, he said, and I think you'll find the arguments presented today to be enlightening, the courtroom murmured. The judge exhaled through his nose, unimpressed. Very well, he said. Let's proceed. The prosecution was eager to begin. They presented their case with surgical precision, outlining Musk's supposed violations, the ways he had allegedly disregarded regulations, the supposed financial chaos he had caused. They laid it all out, piece by piece, confident that the weight of their evidence would crush whatever weak defense he had prepared. And as they spoke, they glanced at the judge, noting his approving nods, his lack of patience for any attempts at rebuttal. Everything was going exactly as they had planned. Everything, that is, until Musk finally spoke. And in that moment, everything began to unravel. Elon Musk sat still as the opposing attorneys finished their opening argument, their voices dripping with confidence. They had spent months preparing for this, carefully constructing a case designed to paint him as reckless, arrogant, and completely indifferent to the rules that governed everyone else. The judge nodded along, clearly entertained by their arguments. The smirk that had formed on his face earlier was still there, an indication of how predictable he thought this would be. Musk could feel the weight of the courtroom pressing in. Expectations, scrutiny, the eyes of the public watching, waiting for him to crack. For a brief moment, he let himself consider what they wanted him to believe. That he was just another billionaire trying to outmaneuver the system. That, no matter how many rockets he built, how many industries he disrupted, how many problems he tried to solve, he was still at the mercy of a system designed to keep people like him in check. Maybe they were right. Maybe, despite everything, he was playing a game that had already been rigged against him. The judge cleared his throat and leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Musk, you've been awfully quiet, he said, his voice carrying the same smug amusement as before. I assume that means you have nothing substantive to offer in your defense. A few chuckles echoed through the courtroom. The opposing attorneys exchanged satisfied glances, already seeing the headlines in their minds. But Musk didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, let the tension build, and then something changed. He straightened slightly, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. His expression remained neutral, but something in his demeanor shifted. The same quiet, calculating energy that had unnerved competitors, investors, and entire industries for years resurfaced in an instant. No, Your Honor, he finally said, his voice calm. I was just waiting for everyone to finish underestimating me. The courtroom fell silent. The judge's smirk faltered slightly. The opposing counsel stiffened, and for the first time, the energy in the room shifted. Musk continued, his voice still measured but now carrying an unmistakable weight. It's interesting, he said, glancing at the attorneys across from him. You've built this case on the assumption that I'm reckless, that I don't understand the law, that I make decisions without considering the consequences. But I have to wonder, if I was as careless as you claim, would I have come here today without knowing exactly how this was going to end? The opposing attorney scoffed, but it was forced. Mr. Musk, this isn't a business meeting. You don't get to negotiate your way out of this one. Musk met his gaze without blinking. Who said anything about negotiating? The tension in the room became suffocating. The confidence that had filled the opposing team just minutes ago was beginning to fracture, the judge shifting slightly in his seat. Musk exhaled and clasped his hands together. The thing about building companies from scratch, launching rockets and putting humans in space, he said, is that you learn to prepare for worst-case scenarios. You learn to anticipate every possible failure before it happens. And you learn, very quickly, that people will always try to stop you. The judge narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you implying that you anticipated being sued? Musk gave a small, knowing nod. Of course. And that's why I made sure you'd never be able to win. The opposing attorneys bristled. Bold words, one of them said. But words aren't enough in a courtroom, Mr. Musk. Musk's eyes flickered with amusement. "You're right," he said, "which is why I brought something better than words." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single folder. The opposing attorneys leaned forward, the judge adjusting his glasses again, curiosity breaking through his dismissive demeanor. Musk slid the folder across the table. "You built this case on the idea that I don't follow the rules," he said. "But what if I told you the rules were never on your side to begin with?" The lead attorney hesitated before picking up the folder and flipping it open. His face paled instantly. His colleague glanced over his shoulder, his jaw tightening. The judge frowned. "What is this?" Musk leaned back slightly. "A legal loophole," he said simply. "One that your entire case depends on, not existing." The attorneys stared at the document in their hands, their confidence crumbling as they scanned the text. Musk had already won, and they had walked right into it. The lead attorney's hands tightened around the folder as he flipped through its contents, his expression shifting from confidence to something much closer to panic. His co-counsel leaned in, scanning the documents with widening eyes. The murmur in the courtroom grew louder as they realized something was happening, something unexpected, something that was never supposed to happen. The judge, noticing the shift in energy, cleared his throat. "Counsel," he said, his voice edged with impatience. "Would you care to explain what you're looking at?" The attorney swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. "Your Honor, we need a moment to review this." Musk smiled slightly. "Take all the time you need. But it won't change anything." The judge shot him a warning look before turning back to the attorneys. "Well?" The lead attorney inhaled sharply, then finally set the folder down, pressing his lips together before speaking. "This is unexpected." Musk's voice was calm, measured, but firm. "No, it's not. You just assumed I wasn't prepared." The attorney hesitated before finally looking up. "Your Honor, these documents contain information that complicates the foundation of our case." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Complicates how?" The opposing attorney took a deep breath, choosing his next words carefully. "Mr. Musk has preemptively addressed every legal accusation in our filing through a series of contractual clauses, federal exemptions, and regulatory loopholes that—" He stopped himself, exhaling. "That we didn't account for." A murmur rippled through the room. The reporters scrambled to write down the development, some already typing furiously on their laptops. The judge frowned. "Are you telling me you built your entire case without verifying the legal standing of your own arguments?" The lead attorney's jaw tightened. "No, Your Honor, but these documents reveal technicalities that were not previously disclosed." Musk chuckled softly. "You mean you didn't bother looking?" The lead attorney clenched his fists under the table. "Mr. Musk, these technicalities don't change the fact that your actions were reckless, that you deliberately pushed legal boundaries, and that—" Musk cut him off. "That I did exactly what the law allows." The judge sat back, observing the exchange. His smirk was gone now, replaced with a thoughtful frown. He flipped through the documents himself, his eyes scanning rapidly, absorbing the implications. After a long moment, he exhaled. "This is highly unusual," the judge muttered. Musk's voice was light, almost amused. "So I've been told." The courtroom was completely still now. The entire narrative had flipped. The attorneys who had strutted in with confidence now looked cornered, scrambling for a way to salvage what had seemed like an inevitable victory. The lead attorney cleared his throat, trying one last desperate approach. "Even if these documents prove that certain regulations technically allow Mr. Musk's actions, that doesn't mean he acted ethically." Musk raised an eyebrow. "Ethically? Oh, that's rich coming from the people who tried to manipulate the law to take me down." The attorney ignored him, turning to the judge. "Your Honor, laws are meant to uphold justice, not just be maneuvered through loopholes. We still believe Mr. Musk's actions violated the spirit of regulations, even if he found a way to evade our liability." Musk leaned forward slightly, his expression finally shifting. "That's an interesting argument," he said. "Because what you're really saying is that you're angry I played the game better than you." The attorney opened his mouth, but Musk didn't give him the chance. "You spent months trying to corner me with a lawsuit built on assumptions and incomplete research. You were so convinced that you had me trapped that you didn't even think to check if I had already planned 5 steps ahead." The judge glanced back at the documents, his expression unreadable. Musk continued, "And now that it's clear your case is collapsing, you're trying to change the argument. You're not upset because I broke the law. You're upset because I followed it better than you did." The lead attorney was silent now. Musk sighed, shaking his head. "This isn't the first time people have tried to stop me with lawsuits, and every time they make the same mistake. They assume I'm reckless. They assume I don't think things through. They assume I don't understand the systems I operate in." The judge set down the folder and folded his hands in front of him. "And are you saying that assumption is wrong?" Musk met his gaze directly. "I'm saying it's exactly why I keep winning." The lead attorney was out of arguments. The weight of the case, once stacked so heavily against Musk, had now completely shifted. The same courtroom that had chuckled at the judge's initial remarks was now silent, watching as the ones who had come in with power now struggled to hold on to it. Musk had turned the tables, and there was nothing they could do about it. The weight of the moment settled over the courtroom. The attorneys who had walked in with confidence now looked trapped, their carefully crafted arguments reduced to scattered fragments. The judge, who had initially laughed at Musk's legal reasoning, was no longer amused. The entire case had unraveled in a matter of minutes, and everyone in the room knew it. Musk remained calm, watching as the realization sank in. The opposition had built their strategy on arrogance, assuming he would be unprepared, assuming he would be easy to take down. But he had never been easy to take down. They had underestimated him like so many others before them, and now they were facing the consequences. The judge exhaled, his expression unreadable. He picked up the folder one last time, flipping through the pages before looking at the lead attorney. "Counsel," he said, his tone measured. "Given the nature of this evidence, do you wish to proceed with this case?" The lead attorney hesitated. His face was stiff, his pride warring with the reality of the situation. Every fibre of his being wanted to fight, to salvage some level of control. But he knew the truth. If they continued, they would only humiliate themselves further. He swallowed hard. "Your Honor, given the new information, we withdraw our case." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. The very people who had laughed at Musk moments ago now exchanged stunned glances. Reporters scrambled to update their notes. The prosecution had walked in expecting victory. Instead, they were walking out with nothing. The judge nodded, his expression tight. Motion to dismiss granted. He set the documents down and turned his gaze to Musk. For the first time that day, his voice held something close to respect. "Mr. Musk, it appears you were more prepared than we gave you credit for." Musk offered a small nod, his expression unreadable. "That tends to happen." The judge sat back, pausing for a moment. "You've made your point today. I'd advise you to enjoy your victory with humility." Musk's lips curled slightly, just enough to hint at amusement. "I didn't come here for victory," he said. "I came here to remind people that progress doesn't wait for permission." The judge considered that for a long moment before finally nodding. "Court is adjourned." The sound of the gavel echoed through the room, sealing the moment. The lead attorney gathered his papers with shaking hands, his colleagues avoiding eye contact as they quickly exited, eager to escape the embarrassment of the defeat. Outside, cameras flashed, journalists swarmed, and the world was already demanding answers. How had they miscalculated so badly? How had Musk managed to dismantle their entire argument with a single folder? The lead attorney kept his head down as he moved past the reporters. He knew the headlines that would follow. The same media outlets that had built up their case would now turn on them, tearing apart their failure in real time. There would be speculation, analysis, late-night talk show jokes at their expense. Musk stepped out of the courtroom, the air crisp and cool as the sun glinted off the lenses of 100 cameras. A reporter rushed forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. Musk, how does it feel to have just outmaneuvered an entire legal team?" He paused, considering the question. Then, with a small, knowing smile, he answered, "Predictable." The reporters erupted, with more questions, their voices overlapping, but Musk was already walking away. He had no interest in gloating, no need to revel in their downfall. The lesson had already been delivered. They had underestimated him. They had thought they could control him, trap him, silence him. But in the end, it wasn't Musk who had been put in his place. It was them.